Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back after lunch. We now have the next round of parallel sessions. Just to make sure that you are in the right room, this is the Queen's Ballroom, if you didn't know, and we've got Jake and James from the University of Southampton. If you're looking for Andrew Dixon, he's in the John Child Suite downstairs, which is where we had dinner last night, and Martin from JISC is next door. So if you are in the wrong room, this is your opportunity to move. If not, I will hand over to Jake and James.
Thank you. Good afternoon. You Sizer, how are we feeling after lunch? Yeah, that's the after lunch feeling, isn't it? I'm sure. Okay, so as you heard, we're from the University of Southampton, and that's our talk. So, this is a story about saving money and time, which is something that we all have to do all the time. But it's also about freeing people up from dull tasks. Healing relationships between teams, making working lives less frustrating, and perhaps most importantly, taking the power for change from the top of the organisation and giving it to the people at the bottom. But first, you're probably asking who we are. So, James?
Yep, so I'm James Lloyd. I'm the technical team lead for the second line support team at the University of Southampton. I started out as a blue coat back in 2007 at Pontins. That's me and the crocodile over there. That's my wife in the bear. I saw the bear and thought, yes, I'll have some of that. And the reason I've put that up there is because I'd never been to Pontins at all when I started working there. It was something I did for my wife. And when I first arrived, one of the first things you sort of have to do is to check people in, etc. And it was terrible. You'd have to queue up for your key, first of all, at one place. You'd have to go and get an electric card from somewhere else. You'd have to go and get your bedding from somewhere else. You'd go back to your chalet, and then you'd realise the key didn't work, so you had to go all the way back, which was, it's not very efficient at all, and it caused some problems. After that, I moved to Dollar Financial UK Limited, worked on the help desk there. We did a variety of different things, though. That you will commonly know as probably the money shop, aka the loan sharks you'll find on the high street. Then I moved to University of Southampton in 2010. In 2011, I progressed to the second line support team. And 2018 was when I took my new role. Over to Jake.
Thank you. So, I started out in IT in 2003, like many people, on the help desk. I then progressed to second line support, then became a team leader, and now I'm a team manager. But more important than all of that is I've been an efficiency nut since 1981. So, let me elucidate. When I was 5, I was walking home from school on my own. It was a different time, don't judge. And I used to walk along the road, find a safe place to cross, walk up the other side of the road. But then, one day, I suddenly realised that it's way quicker and more efficient just to go straight from corner to corner. Of course, the problem with that is it does mean you're spending most of your time walking right down the middle of the road. And I got seriously annoyed when a car came along and I had to jump out of the way. Oh, where's the car gone? Yes. But then, in 2018, I discovered Lean Six Sigma and became a green belt, and that gave me a better outlet for my efficiency cravings. So, yes, we did, and in fact, more than just not upsetting anyone, we actually made people happier. And how did we do that? Well, as mentioned, we did it with Lean Six Sigma. So, just for the uninitiated, it's basically a set of continuous improvement tools. Some of them are very statistical and really boring and dry, but they're worth it. And some of them are a lot more human. And it's all about getting those human solutions, which is what we really focused on. So it helped us see past our assumptions to get to solutions that were actually based on evidence. And that was really important. As you'll see as we go through, there were a lot of assumptions that in fact I've heard around this that are still being made that I've discovered through this statistical research actually aren't necessarily true. So what did I apply it to? Well, the first problem I tackled was this one. It's essentially the idea of there being missing information in tickets. So service line get a call or an email and they will type that up, send it over to another team to fix if they can't fix it on the first line. But often along the way, in fact, as we heard from the previous talk, some information is missing from those tickets. And that causes us to go out and contact the user again, get more information. It all adds up to time. And I was working at the initial estimate that was about 753 hours of what we're calling rework annually. And what that causes on the human level is frustration, a lot of frustration in the second line teams, a lot of anger towards the first line for missing that information and causing us to do that extra work. And previous attempts to fix this had just amounted to people talking to the first line manager saying, you need to keep getting this information, why do you keep missing it? And then shouting at the first line guys. It didn't get us anywhere. So I thought it was about time we looked into it properly. And I was hoping that in that I would save around 377 hours per year, which equates to around £10,000. Not too bad, but as we'll see, those figures went up quite dramatically. So just to let you know, this is a very, very condensed version. The full version of this is 120 slides long, and I've tried to cram this down to 20 slides. If you want to know more about any of these things, please, ask questions at the end, or you can come and find me afterwards. So, the Lean Six Sigma process starts with the define phase, where we go out and talk to our customers. And I found out that there are actually two types of customers. So if you think about the ticket logging process, the external customers, we're not actually talking about people external to the university, but those are the customers who are actually logging their problems with us to solve. They're external because the process that we're looking at is logging the ticket, passing it through to resolution. So the internal customers are actually the people in our department who receive those tickets from service line. So I held interviews, I ran surveys, we found out a lot of information. Obviously, I'm not going to read through all that, but we categorized various bits of information, got lots and lots of good ideas and feedback. And that took us into the measure phase when we started to know exactly what we wanted to look at. So one of the interesting outcomes from the survey was that the department, although I estimated 8% of tickets were missing critical information, they were estimating about 20%. So already that figure is going up quite significantly. They also told us the most important bits of information. So then I could start measuring how often those bits of information were missing. Okay, so this is a very complicated slide with a lot of Lean Six jargon on there. But all we really need to know is that what we actually discovered, that it was actually not 8%, not 20%, but 44% of tickets had missing information, which was 5.5 times more than our original estimates. So that means everything went up. So our original estimate of rework went from 753 hours a year to 4,110. And there's the equivalent savings in money. But the important thing is that I got cocky here and thought I can probably save a bit more. So I upped my own estimates of saving 50% to 67%, which came to roughly 56 grand of savings, potentially, if I pulled it off. So that took us through to the next phase, which was analyze. And this is a really key slide, because this was one of the ones that challenged my initial assessment assumption, was that I assumed right from the beginning of this, email was going to be the worst ticket logging channel for missing information. Because we all know you can't control what a user puts in it. They're always missing information. And yeah, they do. But as it turns out, there's actually no statistical difference between the amount of missing information coming in through email than through the other channels. So my original thing, let's just turn off email, which I've heard many times today, perhaps not the best solution. So And then the next slide. But the next question, should we focus on specific types of different missing data? And that was a definite yes, because it looks like if we focus on these top 4 categories, we can actually cover off 75% of the missing information. And then we can spend minimal time trying to find solutions for the next 4. However, what we actually found is that it's probably best to try and find solutions that actually covered more of them at once, rather than specifying. So, this is a long one, but basically over a number of sessions we used some tools and some workshopping, and we came up with a whole bunch of root causes. There are 12 of them in all, too few mandatory fields, no official procedure for gathering and storing information that teams actually require the service desk to get. So the poor service desks are expected to get all this information for all these other teams, but no one's telling them what. Not all users have English as a first language. Not sure we're ever going to be able to solve that one, but it's a problem. It's a root cause. This was another good one. Information that the users need and that service desk are asking the users for, it's difficult for them to find. Difficult to find the version of the operating system, how much memory they have, how much space they've got on their hard disk. We've already talked about email not being an effective logging channel. There were some scripts that we hadn't configured that could help. And various more things. I'm not going to go through it all. Suffice to say that we had a lot of root cause problems that we could look at. Okay, and that took us into the improve phase. And the start of this was probably my most fun I had on this whole project, was engaging with the service desk team. Because if you remember when we talked about this at the start, the service desk team had been very much the victims of this because they were seen as the problem. But it wasn't them. It wasn't them that's the problem. Mistakes always happen, you know, they're human. So they're always going to make mistakes. But we can fix this by mistake proofing and getting them together and helping them to understand this when they always felt put upon or blamed, taking the blame away from them, it really turned them around and made them happy. And then I got them to come up with the solutions and them to prioritize the solutions, and that got them really invested in the process. And it was a meeting that they were all terrified to come to, but by the end of it, they were a very happy team. So I'm just going to highlight a couple of ideas that they came up with. Firstly, a simple app that sits on the desktop, has all the information that service desk might ask a user for. I created this mock-up. So you can see it's got lots of, it highlights potential problems in red. It even has pop-up suggestions. Your PC has been on for 18 days and 3 hours. Why not try rebooting it before you call the service desk? Things like that. And the service desk can cut and paste that text into tickets so that we have all the information that we've asked for and even more that we didn't think we needed. So the benefits of this was all the information is at the user's fingertips. It prevents some tickets reaching service desk at all with the pop-up suggestions. The second idea highlight, this was probably the most successful in fact, is a system whereby when the service desk selects the service that an incident relates to, it pops up a checklist of the things they need to get. And that checklist is populated by the people that actually support that service. So this is the way then that the support teams tell Service Line what information to get, and if the information is missing from that list, it's only their fault, it's not service desk's fault. So the benefits, service desks know exactly what is needed every time. They get more first-time fixes because we can put suggestions in that box as well. And although it seemed like it was going to be a really big task to do at the moment because we have over 500 different services, we figured that just by focusing on the top 14 services, that would cover 80% of incoming tickets, which would obviously be a massive improvement. So it's not that we had to do all 500 services straight away. So how do you choose best solutions? Well, this is where we came with this solution selection matrix, which measures their effectiveness, the feasibility, the cost, customer acceptance. And this is a time where, yet again, turn off email, which you can probably see is actually possible solution number one, because everyone, even after the evidence I presented before, everyone still wanted to do it desperately. It actually turned out it wasn't going to be that effective. So that one fell by the wayside, and we focused on the I think 5 with the highest score. Okay, so just to review what we did. So this was one of our quick wins. It turned out there was no article on knowledge base to help users update their contact and location information. So it was no wonder that we were missing that information from a lot of tickets. Location and contact number weren't actually mandatory fields, so they were getting missed. Very quick win, easy fix. This was the finished app. You saw the mock-up earlier. That took one of our development guys a day to create using PowerShell, and it's been really successful. This is the little box that pops up on the call logging form that tells them the information they need to get. And we also sent out some targeted emails targeted at the users who didn't have location and contact number information, inviting them to update their details and make sure that they're right. So, following that, we have the last phase, which is the control phase. So, this is the phase that people find quite boring sometimes, because you're basically making sure that the changes you've made stick. And that's what this form is all about. You hand over the changes you've made to the people that actually run the processes and put these things in place to make sure they stick. But I'm not going to go through that now. I'm going to go to the important bit. The overall effect, I think if you remember, I was hoping to make a 67% improvement. Turns out I just beat that. It was a 68% improvement. So, but the key numbers are on the next page. So, we saved a total, just in this project, of 2,121 hours. And just to remind you, those hours are not just hours saved, those are hours, miserable hours. Those are hours of people gathering stuff that should have already been gathered. It's hours of frustration. It's hours of casting blame at our colleagues on the first line. So I think it's much more than just those hours. But because this is a Lean Six Sigma project, we have to talk about money as well. So in the end, it worked out that that was £78,000 a year. So not too bad from a 10,000 original savings goal. Okay, and that's my project. Now I'm going to pass over to James to talk about his.
Okay, so Jake went through a Greenbelt project, which is a lot more in-depth. You do a lot more analysis with the Greenbelt. We do 2 sets, so I'm working on a Greenbelt at the moment, but this one's based around a Yellow Belt, which is quicker, maybe less savings. You generally pick something that would annoy you, get in the way, and focus on that. So first point, I've got to find out what a problem is, right? So we looked at what we do every day, and we said, well, what is it that we would make go away if we could? What is it that we repetitively do over and over again that's just a pain in the backside? We looked at, obviously, the number of our requests coming in and which one was ranked highest. And we need to kind of identify what in there would be some form of uniformed process that, regardless of what input comes in, it's got the same sort of output. Because the whole plan from the start was, I'm going to get rid of this task, and the only real way I can do that is through automation. So yeah, we had all of the information we needed in our current login channel. This is how the current process looked before we did any changes. So the user would fill in the form on the left there. That would generate a ticket into ServiceNow, and then we would do the rest. So we'd manually seek approval from whoever the account owners are, which again, you can see we already have that information in there. We know who the owners of the accounts are. And yet we'd come in and we'd grant access to this particular mailbox in either Exchange or 365. I probably glanced over what the project was, sorry. It was the fact of granting people access to other shared email boxes, so like an admissions account or something like that. So that was how it was. We looked at what it costs, so about 1,500 tickets in the previous year, not massively high volume. I looked at a comparable range for the time of year I was doing it, so I knew there wasn't going to be any influxes with intake or anything. We timed the activity, so we sat down, I think I did about 50 timings with the stopwatch and calculated the point of when someone receives that ticket, exactly how long it takes them, including the time to process the ticket and including the time it took Service Line to process the tickets, because at that point they weren't directly coming straight to us. It worked out at 264 hours a year. Minimal, but still, it's an annoying task. No one wants to do a repetitive task every day, for years. And it worked out about £5,500 a year in staff costs. We generally go by the benchmark of a green belt. You kind of are looking to save around 10 grand. So that kind of also pushed this into the yellow belt category because the savings weren't quite there, but was definitely worth doing something. So we automated it. So we created some workflows in ServiceNow. We adjusted the queue requests, so we added workflows to make sure either of the two contacts on the form you just saw got an email when permissions were requested over an account. They'd have to approve that. ServiceNow knows that they'd approved it, and it kind of queues up. ServiceNow's got an API, I think something that's coming to Topdesk, which a lot of you are using. And the API talks to ServiceNow and looks at any requests that are queued. So these are things that have been requested, authorized, haven't been actioned. It works through PowerShell, basically a script connecting through the API, and that runs every hour currently. We're looking to probably increase that to every half an hour, and looks for the last 50 outstanding requests. It then connects automatically up to Exchange and 365, not using a hard-coded password or anything. It connects up through another API to our password management tool, so we don't have any security concerns there. It grants access, and the ticket gets resolved. Customer gets a nice email telling them exactly what account they've got access to, a link with the instructions as to how to add it to their accounts, etc. That's the script should anyone really care, but it wasn't too in-depth, simple 440-liner. Took about 2 hours to write, but as we all work for universities, you know how long it takes to get through change. So that took about 3 weeks to be able to get through the process and actually go live with it. Obviously, it was all already up and running in Dev, working brilliantly there. And yeah, it did work. So over the same period in 2017-18, in the comparable range, we spent 85 hours on it. This year, after we made the change, we only spent 20. Now, there's a very good reason for that. We were moving between platforms from our on-premise Exchange to Office 365. And part of this tool checks what platform you're in. We decided to not do the cross-tenancy access granting because we like to provide them a bit more of additional support as to how to add it, because it's a slightly different process. We're through that now, so they're all automated, and we are not seeing a single ticket. It says since October 2018 we've automated 1,078. That was when this slide was wrote. When I checked before I left for this conference, it was at 1,500, which is more than we'd had for the total of the previous year. So the savings are going to be higher by about 50%, I imagine. So yeah, 108 hours, probably about 150 hours now. And the best thing, they're all closed within an hour. So the customer's average time to get this delivered last time was 1.1 days. Now it's 1 hour, which I think is brilliant. Not too bad for a few hours work. And we don't have to click any buttons. So I'm pretty convinced that our team are happier and they wouldn't want to go back and do this again. There was a lot of there was a lot of thought that this was the first arm in trying to reduce staff numbers and try and cut corners and so we could get rid of people and save money. That's not really the case. This is just work that gets in the way if you're doing your job effectively, right? It stops you being able to focus on things that maybe are a bigger problem, take up more time, that generally, a lot of people push to the back burner. Yeah, that was my yellow belt.
Over to Jay. Talk a little bit about your green belt that's coming up?
My green belt is about, we've got an identity management system. Our first highest ticket at the moment is for identity management requests. So that could be anything from someone wants a new account, someone wants a renewal of an account. It's all there at the moment, but it's very much you click the buttons, etc. We're going to try and get rid of those tickets by 50% at least. We can't automate everything there because of compliance. Sometimes you've got to check the usage of an account, make sure people are using it for the right reasons or using it in the best secured way as possible. But I'm pretty sure we'll be able to make a dent. The idea being, if someone needs to renew an email account, why have we got to click the approve button? It's already been approved by whoever the authorizer is for the account, so let's just get it done. And moving on from the Yellow Belt project as well into this, what I want to do is feed in a more granular control of access over accounts. So if you're the owner of an account, you can go in and you can add and remove users from any of the accounts of which you're one of the owners of. And that will be coming in the next year. So we're really stepping up automation, and it's all driven through ServiceNow. It's a tool we've had for maybe 7 years, and we have only really been exploring the true benefits it can bring in the last year or so. So these are the first ones. But I remember you, Sizer, last year, one of the closing comments was, does anyone have any fully automated processes that actually deliver something that's not just a static text response? And I can't remember anyone putting their hands up. Apologies if you did, but I didn't see anyone. But now we do. So, yeah, great.
Thanks, James. So my next Greenbelt project is a bigger scale. It's not just focused within the IT department in terms of saving our time. It's aimed at saving the users' time. So I want to reduce the wait time that the users have. The average ticket duration is 12 business hours. So that's around 2 days. But I worked out that the average time actually spent working on a ticket is 55 minutes. So obviously there's a massive disparity there that we can do something about. And I worked out that just a small, fairly straightforward saving of 30% would actually work out to 250,000 hours of our customers saved every year. And when I applied that, I actually spoke to some of our customers and worked out how much they thought their productivity was affected by waiting for a ticket to be resolved, whether it was an urgent ticket or a regular ticket or a request. And they gave me some figures that I averaged out, and I applied some tools, and I worked out that that would actually save the university £1.2 million a year in productivity savings. So that's my next project that I'm currently in the improve phase, so I'm quite a long way through that one as well. And that's us. Have you got any questions for either of us?
We're early.
We are early, so we've got plenty of time if you have any. Yes. One of there, we get
doing
mics.
or?
Hi, thanks. I'd be interested to know a bit more about the automatic approval process, so exactly how that works. So when a request comes in, how is it deciding whether that can be approved or can't be approved?
So ServiceNow has a workflow ability in it. We have a feed from our identity management system, have done for a while, that links directly into ServiceNow. So ServiceNow's got all the information relating to these shared accounts. The identity management system contains who's the contacts for those accounts, when it was created, all that sort of stuff, and that's how we get our passwords reset. In terms of approval, it comes in, you submit the request, and the workflows behind the form look at the variables from the form, picks out the account, grabs the primary owners, and queues them up. It's got a approvals workflow built into ServiceNow anyway. And it queues them up as both are authorizers. They get an email, they click on the button to sign into ServiceNow portal. Either one of the contacts can authorize it, and then the other one's no longer required. But it's just like a background workflow of the ticket management system. You can use it across many, many areas. I think we do it for change management as well, for peer approval and things like that. So it's, it's built into the tool basically. We just weren't utilizing it till fairly recently.
But your identity management system is it has all the information about who the authorizers are for each account.
Yeah.
So when that comes in from one of those people into your ITSM tool, the identity management system's going, yep, that's fine, go ahead and do
exactly.
it. Okay.
I think it is an overnight feed currently rather than through a direct API call to the identity management system. But yeah, we don't create accounts or anything like that directly in AD. We have a dedicated system that contains all the information. It's fed from the student records team, it's fed from the HR data, and then for these sort of shared accounts and non-personal accounts, I think as someone referred to it, then we can manually insert records into that system. But yeah, it's got all the information there. They're mandatory to have the contact information, etc. Yeah, well, it's quite a newish system. I think the IDM's been around 3 years. We had a system before which was similar, but was very old. I mean, 15 years old or something. So IDM was a big drive, and we're seeing a lot more chances to develop within this identity management system, which is developed in-house, to do a lot more. So that's where we're aiming to get to.
And the app that you have on user screens,
Yeah.
what product are you using for that? What's producing that pop-up window that gives the user the information about
That
it?
was just coded in PowerShell.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
that will be using the Windows Form Store to display the graphics, etc. So, yeah, I think we've got something similar for a bunch of our tools. So we started putting them in a nice flashy GUI rather than getting someone to type in a long command or something. So we've got a few tools we've developed in-house that will just let you click a button to do a task, and it'll ask you for the information. It's just a bit easier to manage when your process changes as well. So if you need to suddenly grant access in a different way, you haven't got to try and encourage the behaviour change it in the tool, and the tool takes care of it for you.
Because we've used that for the Windows 10 self-service upgrades as well, haven't we?
Yeah, we do it for the connections off to Office 365 and Exchange, so rather than people having to manually load up PowerShell and writing all the rubbish to get into the cloud, it's just a button they click and it fires it up. The benefit of that as well, you can title your windows and change your backgrounds and stuff, so you can customise it so it looks on brand, if you like. But there's some limitations with the Windows forms. It's the easiest way and quickest way to get it up there, but there's many, many other ways to develop things like that. I think Python is generally the most favourable solution, but yeah.
Going back to the automation for the form there, does that also, I didn't hear you saying, but does that pump the user's details straight into AD as well? So that
Yeah, so when an account record is created and subscribed, yeah, it goes straight into AD, puts them in the right OU. We have them populated with staff groups, which are AD groups, which then contain a bunch of the software groups that faculty may need. So we know for engineering, they're all going to want MATLAB. So it's in there by default. Our license covers us, so why not? Yeah, and it sets things like their password expiry is all controlled by that. Self-service password reset. Yeah, it's very flexible, but I imagine it costs a lot of time to develop. So
yeah, that's the other thing is how much did it take a long time to get the group namings and everything like that in AD tied up, or maybe you've always had a very good naming convention.
Yeah, I mean, since I've worked there 10 years ago, we've always had some form of identity management system. So I think we were very early off the ball with that, and things like usernames, etc. We don't let people pick them. They're allocated based on a formula of when you start, what your name is, and what year you started, as well as the month. So we used to have the older ones. They're still, scattered around people just with the username Tim, for example. But yeah, they're slowly dying off. We're slowly getting more unique usernames. But yeah, it also helps manage life cycle of things like alumni. So all our when our students qualify, etc., they keep their email account for life, right? And we sort of convert the record in IDM, so we can still see a record of this person. It converts to this sort of alumni status, if you like. It still authenticates through our AD at the moment, but I think there's going to be some work around alumni in the next year or so, probably by a development team, as to how we provision them going forward. But yeah.
Thank you.
Mine's just more of a comment about what we do at York. So we have second line staff come and cover the frontline desk when frontline staff are in a meeting. And I think that's really good for reminding second line staff, and I know I'm guilty of it, of how much pressure there is on frontline staff. So when you were saying at the start about how second line staff get really annoyed that the frontline staff aren't passing all the details through, it's a really good quick way to remind second line staff
No,
that
you're
the front line
absolutely
staff are
right.
under pressure.
It's something that we do as well. We do that for their meetings, and we also cover them when they're overly busy. The thing behind this was perhaps even less about the second line staff, because in fact a lot of our second line staff have come from first line. But there was a lot of the third line teams that would be perhaps a bit more vocal, and they're actually based in the same building as service line, whereas we weren't. So it was...
Yeah, I mean, this has brought a lot of challenges anyway, because how long was it? Maybe 4 years ago now, because we're completely centralised IT, we don't really have any faculty embedded pockets. We've got a couple of technicians scattered around, but they're all within central. But yeah, about 4 years ago, we completely overhauled where everyone was. So they took the majority of the IT department and took them out to a building in the middle of town, away from the campus, and they left us there. And we thought there'd be some sort of drift in us keeping in touch with those, but it's not been that bad. And things like this actually help you breach that, because you have to physically go to get this sort of stuff done and to talk to your stakeholders and to get some buy-in from senior management. That's the key bit maybe that's not been mentioned. The main driving point that you will not succeed if you're going to do any sort of Lean Six Sigma stuff has to have senior management buy-in. If it doesn't, you'll fall on your wayside, because in essence you could pick a problem that has nothing to do with you. It's a completely different team, you're isolated from them, and you could solve their problem because you've got the jurisdiction from SMT just to walk in and step on their, I say step on their toes, but you're making it better, right? You still have to liaise with them to make sure they're happy.
Yeah, and this is it, and we don't, the whole point of this is to make things better for people. It's not, it's, you know, the efficiency savings are just something that happens really when you make things better, but what we're doing is making working lives easier. We're taking away the more dull
burdens.
tasks. Yeah, the burdens. So that's the idea really behind it. Any more questions? Okay,
Lovely.
well, now it's over to you. You don't need to learn Lean Six Sigma to put these ideas into practice. You know, there are improvements that you can do yourself right now. That's service-specific guidance. I don't know if Unidesk can do that, but if you have Unidesk forums where you decide, as I heard earlier, what goes into it, that is something that you can put into to get done. That, like I said, that little app that sits on people's desktops, that took a day to develop, and yeah, it's been really successful. And if it's an admin task, as James has shown, you can pretty much automate it, at least partially. And yeah, there's a whole bunch of things that we haven't really talked about that we didn't manage to automate the entire process, but we automated a lot of it and took the drudgery out of it and just left us with the bits that we really had to do. And yeah, if you want to learn anything more about these, do come and find us. And thank you for listening.